Today we've got Sriram, who's the Senior Engineering Director from Betterworks. So Sriram, thank you. We've been chatting on WhatsApp for
Yep.
quite some time, and the first time we're doing something like this together. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity. So Sriram has been, uh, I don't know what's the best way to say, right? He's been a remote proponent, evangelist, uh, practitioner for almost 10 years, right? And
Yep.
he's been leading his Betterworks team again in a fully remote fashion for quite some time. GoFloaters and myself, I've had the opportunity to associate with Sriram and his team over the last year or so. But then, what I in this conversation, Sriram, as we discussed earlier, we want to peel the onion, learn the secret sauce from you. Right? I know you did a spoiler alert a little while ago on LinkedIn, but I'm sure there's a lot of secret elements that you just are too humble to call it a secret sauce. But over to you, Sriram. So, for the rest of us, a quick intro on Sriram and quick intro on Betterworks before we get into the questions.
Sure. We can start with that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, thanks a lot for the opportunity first to start with. The time when Betterworks started thinking of going remote was the time I think GoFloaters was also being, it was just floating around to use a pun. And I think, turned out to be the right time. And I'm very happy that, we got associated together. To give an introduction on myself, right, I would say I am a I'm a two-time failed entrepreneur. I tried a couple of times and it didn't work out. That's a good point to start with. So I know what it means to run a business. So a lot of
Right.
respect for what you're doing. I'm a very reluctant engineer. I was an even more reluctant manager to start with. My dream is to someday get out of software industry and do something else. What I'm actually enthusiastic about, and that's what drives a lot of things that I do at work, is I read a lot. I'm a philosopher. I'm a writer, and that is where a lot of my work, a lot of stuff gets inspired. I'm inspired by people like Ricardo Semler from Brazil, who runs Semco, an organization without any rules.
Right.
David Marquette, who talked about democratizing decisions in a nuclear submarine. If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Okay.
And things like Michael Sandel, who talks about the tyranny of merit, about how luck plays a lot of opportunity in a lot of things that we're doing. Those are some of things that inspire and drive me. Talking about Betterworks itself, I think I'll speak specifically about Betterworks India. Betterworks Global is really huge and a lot of stuff to talk about over there. We started as Hyphen, an employee engagement platform, about 8 years ago. I joined the company about 4.5 years ago. At that time, it was around 7 engineers. And since then, through the pandemic and everything, we've grown to around 42 engineers, 50 plus, full-time employees if you include the product as well in India. The team is completely distributed, both in US and India. We are distributed across states, across time zones. And the India team has done, phenomenal work. I'm really proud to work with that team. They've, repaid the trust that our core leadership, put in us multiple times over and over again. So that's possibly a brief introduction. And yeah, speaking about Betterworks itself, we are into performance enablement. So, driving business outcomes through conversations, feedback, goal setting, employee engagement. That's what, we do.
And what better person to talk about building high performance teams, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, so I think this was quite excited to kind of know that. I'm just curious to know, is Betterworks also fully remote all over, or is it just the India team, or
Yes,
context
yes,
any?
yes. No, so no, that was a very brave decision that our CEO Doug took at the beginning of this, pandemic, and he stuck to it. That's something that I really admire him a lot for. We decided to go remote first, and we've been remote first since. And it's not just remote only; it's remote first. I
Remote
think
first,
there's a
yes.
difference over there. Yeah,
Correct. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I'll
yeah,
stand myself corrected and refer
yeah.
right
No
to this,
problem.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So let's jump into the into the conversation in
yeah.
terms of the questions, right? So I just want to, and even before BetterWorks, you've worked in other
Hmm.
remote first organizations, right? So what if you sum up your 10 years of working remote, right, for different
Hmm.
with different teams, building different teams, building different products, right, working under different managements and all that, right? How has it been personally for Sriram, right? How is it
Yep.
experience for you? And would you today retrospectively would you look at it any which ways, any other which ways, right?
Yep. See, even when I started working in the software industry, the first thing that I always used to think was, why should I come into a box and why do I have to work? I always thought that work happens when you're sitting outside. I used to envy, people who actually work outdoors a lot. So that thought was always there. So the first time I went kind of semi-remote was when I started my own consultancy about 5 years ago. That consultancy was more of an experiment in work culture rather than just getting things done. And when we did that, we struggled a lot with culture. We struggled a lot with process. My ideas were very nebulous and half-formed, ill-formed at that time, and I couldn't execute it as well as I wanted to. But I think a lot of things in that business were possible because we were working remotely. For the business itself, we were able to hire a lot of people who we wouldn't have been able to hire otherwise. And for me personally, right, it was a very challenging time. I was raising a newborn, my daughter. I was managing a lot of challenges with a home that we had just constructed, and it had a lot of issues. I couldn't have done any of that, if I wasn't remote and if I didn't have that flexibility. And that also, I think having gone through those challenges, I've built a little more empathy for similar challenges that other people might, go through. And until the pandemic, I was semi-remote. So, I used to go to office once in a while, once or twice in a week, and that kind of stuff. And after the pandemic, I've been fully remote. I go to office when it is required, primarily to meet and socialize. What this means is, it's not just that, now I am the master of my own destiny, my own time. At least the commute destiny and commute time is under my control. It's not just that. The most important thing for me is that, because I am able to run a remote team, I'm able to hire a lot of people that I wouldn't be able to hire otherwise. I can't imagine scaling a team from 7 to 40 if I had to hire people only in Bangalore. That's one limitation, and I can't hire and scale from 7 to 40 rapidly if I say that caregivers, women who've just given birth, people with physical challenges and all of it, they are out of my contention. I think that kind of, and that also brings a lot of diversity, it brings a lot of kindness and understanding to the team. I think all of those wouldn't have been possible without remote team. So I wouldn't go back, to answer that question.
Yeah. Sure. So I think I'm going to digress a little bit, right? You kind of talked about, and this is this is something that resonates from everybody, right? So the biggest brahmastra of remote is that you can talent, right? You widen the horizon of the funnel, right? I'm talking of startups, right? You're building a funnel for your talent, right? The funnel gets really wide, right? So I mean, is that, I mean, and you're seeing that as well, right? So apart from that, right, what are the like big things that you feel a non-remote first organization kind of ends up missing, right? Obviously access to the talent pool, but what else goes missing in a fully office bound organization, right? Again,
Yep. See, I think a lot of that will also become evident as we talk about the mechanics of remote work later on. I think one of the biggest advantages of remote work is that it puts a constraint that everybody is not available all the time. And I really like, I'm a writer, so I like, constraint writing. I like, writing poems with, specific rhythmic and metrical structures, which forces you, if you put remote work as a constraint and you say that not available in general, then you more asynchronously. You start planning for more failures. You start planning for people not being available. One of the things that I love about Betterworks is the number of meetings that I don't attend, but I have recordings, I have references, I have documents that I can, pick up, follow up on. That kind of stuff, it won't happen in a place that is not remote first. There is no constraint there. You assume that everybody is in the office. You assume that everybody who's in the office has got everything that you want. There is very little reflection that will happen as part of the system. I think that's another, very big benefit.
Absolutely. So
and the other benefit, which is like, sorry, go ahead.
No, please continue. Sure.
Yeah, no, and I think another benefit that everybody fails to see with very direct business benefit is the cost. I'm not paying for a fixed physical space, electricity, etc. I'm not, paying for things that are really meaningless when people are not in the office.
Absolutely. So I think the one point that you said, right, is that when you assume that people are not going to be around all the time, presence and presenteeism is not assumed by default, right? Is that I kind of have a feeling that remote organizations are also they also get better with planning. They get better with uh,
Absolutely. Yep.
with like documentation by default, right? They get better with like you said, right? All the permutation combinations of scenarios of what could go wrong, right? They are better prepared for
Mm, mm.
adversities within the team, external, internal, because they're better planning. They're not like always feeling and driving by the wire, right? They think ahead. Hey,
Yep.
this is
Yep.
what I need to do for my team to work the next week, right? In an async mode, right? So you're kind of planning better and structuring your thoughts better rather than seeing your team member and say, hey, today you do this. Tomorrow come and tell me, I'll give you some other task, right? So they from task oriented, they
Yep.
get a
Yep.
little bit more objective oriented and goal oriented rather than just like driving the teams by tasks and being a task manager, right? You become a little bit more. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's a point that I think gets missed out when we compare the two forms of workplace, right? So now mechanics, we
Yep.
come to the
Yep.
mechanics that we want to
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
get into, right? So if you peel the onion
Mhm.
on the remote work approach at Betterworks, right? So I want you to, I mean, I'll open this for you, but I would love you to touch upon um, you talked about async, right? Presence is not assumed, so you're async.
Mhm.
So if you could touch upon how async communication happens. When we were catching up earlier on, you said that every meeting is 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 set up to fix some problem, right? A blunder, right? So every
Mhm.
meeting is a waste
Mhm.
of, and you echoed other leaders' views, right? So I want to talk about. I want you to stress upon uh, in general the mechanics of remote work at Betterworks, but specifically stress or highlight async communication, collaboration within a team across multiple teams, and yeah. So maybe to begin with those three aspects.
Sure. Yes. Yes. See, I think when you talk about mechanics, right, it has to be on a firm foundation. So, the culture is really the foundation on which you can, build a lot of this. I will take a moment to talk about, Betterworks' culture and my personal belief in culture as well. So, like I said, Betterworks has a remote first culture, and we spoke about how, the default assumption is that people won't be available, and you have to plan for that. The other important part of the Betterworks culture is trust. I think that is very important. You have to have trust that people in general will be, productive. Nobody in the world wants to do a shitty job. Nobody in the world wants to idle. I think I can put it as, the natural human condition is to do something meaningful. So you have to have a lot of trust in that. That is something that happens a lot at Betterworks. And personally, right, added to this, one of the other principles that I apply is that I'm a very lazy person. I sincerely believe that we should all work less, and that's kind of where we are moving towards. Your outcomes, the habits that you build, the learning that you acquire, that is what matters. It's not the effort. If we are still concerned about effort, we should all be going out there and hunting and harvesting and gathering and all
Correct.
of that. We're not doing that. Work, it has always been about simplifying and automating work. So these are the two principles. And if you build on top of that, right, let's talk about inter-team collaboration first. See, again, right, I want to just start with a story about this Ricardo Semler's situation where we're talking about an assembly line factory with hundreds of workers. Something that is traditionally thought to be something that's not creative at all. People get together on time, they get their stuff done, and they move out. Ricardo decided to kind of turn this around. He told people that figure out how things have to be done, and he said run the factory based on your rules. The executives, in general, believe that this is going to lead to a lot of chaos. But surprisingly, people collaborated. They spent weeks planning, and on the day that the factory was supposed to be run by the workers, everybody came on the same time about what they're working on. That's kind of my takeaway from this story. So you have to build that care, and you then have to create frameworks that allow that kind of collaboration. You have maybe regular stand-ups, and these could be asynchronous stand-ups, and people manage their own time off. I think that's very, very important in inter-team collaboration. If people are communicating when they're taking time off, if people are communicating when they're going to go for a grocery run, or to pick up kids from school and all of it, they do it without any fear. That makes a huge difference.
Right. Right.
And within a team, you need a short term and a long term plan. In the short term, you need to know what you're going to do. Maybe again, I'm talking in engineering terms. So maybe you need sprints and you need clarity on what you're going to achieve in the next 2 week sprint, and how is the team achieving that? What are the blockers to that? And you also need some sort of long term bottom up planning, preferably. There is a vision that comes from the top, and there are, if it's engineers, it's engineers. If it is salesmen, if it is salespeople, if it's salespeople, marketing, they estimate and say this is what it takes to get this vision executed, and you kind of let them track it. I
Mhm.
think that naturally promotes inter-team collaboration. In fact, I would say inter-team collaboration is the smallest of challenges, because it's like a team of 10 people. They care about what they want to do, they will get it done.
Right.
That usually happens. Intra-team collaborations actually becomes a bigger challenge. It is interesting that you brought that question up, because right now we are in the middle of a very complex rewrite of our software. We are trying
Okay.
to achieve some really significant outcomes, and like I told, right, we are distributed across time zones, across countries, across experiences as well. Like our team has engineers with 15 to 20 plus years of experience, and engineers with 1 year experience.
Mm. Mm.
Now, the starting point for that intra-team collaboration is, our leaders. I want to call out my EVP and my peer in the US, Cheryl and Meher Hanafi. They've done an excellent job of, setting the vision, setting, a very clear goal, saying that this is what we need to achieve. And these are the boundaries. That is very important within, an intra-team. You need to know who owns what,
Right.
uh, and once that is done, right, and yeah, so one principle that we all use is, in terms of delineation of ownership, you
Mhm.
find out who owns the risk of delivery, and they own the decisions. It's very important
Right.
to guide it on that principle. And once you set that up, you have regular intergroup check-ins. uh, Preferably, when you're doing these check-ins, you have some sort of roadmap or metrics or something that you're reviewing on a regular basis. Building that habit of checking, plans always go to shit. Whatever you plan, the moment you start executing, that plan is useless. So
Right.
comparing what is your execution versus your plan, like for example, in our case, we review things like defect quality. We review things like how long it takes on an average for us to ship something out to a customer, and how far away we are from the roadmap commitments that we made. So that kind of comparison, check in with the entire team, that makes a huge difference.
Right.
And the other point with inter team collaboration is, it is very important to avoid transactional collaboration alone. You should not
Mm.
just collaborate because you have something to do. Things like lunch and learn, things like team intra team mentorships, that is something that's phenomenal at Betterworks. We have a lot of mentorship initiatives that go on. So that kind of stuff where you build relationships just for the sake of building relationships. That also matters a lot. So if all of these are in place, then automatically it works. Uh,
Right.
and the last point that I would also make about communication is, it makes it easier if a lot of communication is in the flow of work. I don't step out to go to an email or to some other place to communicate. For example, if I am working as an engineer, can I make most of my communication? Can I put my architecture documents, technical decisions, all of it in my GitHub repository?
Mm-hmm.
Use my PR review process itself to get that done. If you are working in sales, maybe you get a lot of that communication done within Gong itself. So
Mm-hmm.
that sort of trying to streamline your communication so that there is lesser friction to communicate. I think that also makes a huge difference.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Great, great points. And again, I mean, and you kind of again went back in this entire
Hmm?
answer, right? You also went back to the foundations that you talked about accountability and shared
Hmm?
ownership, right? So I
Hmm?
want to kind of bring that back again, right?
Hmm?
So how do you again how do you bring that up, right? How do you make that happen, right? How do you make somebody who's joined, let's say,
Hmm?
and you talk about experience
Hmm?
versus
Hmm?
experience varying, right? So let's say somebody has joined Betterworks, right, and
Hmm?
they're fairly new to the organization, right? So
Hmm?
how do you inculcate this culture of not culture, but the ownership, right? The shared
Hmm?
ownership and the accountability. How do you bring that to the person? How do you make them uh, uh, assimilate that, right? So
Hmm?
what happens, right? So if you can throw some light on that.
Sure. Yeah. See, Yeah, so two parts to that, right? Like any other company, we have onboarding process. We don't expect anybody in our team to hit the ground running. That's a phrase that I hate a lot. It is something that, like for example, the founder of Basecamp, DHH, he keeps saying that, you can be somebody with even 20 years of experience. You can't hit the ground running. So we have that, onboarding phase. We have the phase where they can learn. They usually have an onboarding buddy from someone who's outside the team who helps them
Right.
understand and all of it. Again, these are standard things that you will do whether you're remote or you're non-remote. That just happens. But really, what happens when somebody new comes to a team, and what are they going to do? They mimic what is happening in the team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, if your team has a high, accountability culture, in general, if your team is friendly, if they're all sharing and all of it, that is what they will mimic. It doesn't matter how good that person is, what culture they come from. It goes all the way back to our prehistorical days. If you want to be accepted in the tribe, you have to mimic the patterns of the tribe.
Right. Right.
Uh, so and I think that is what matters. So uh, are you able to build a team that builds those cultures, those habits, so that people who come in are able to mimic it easily. The
Right.
second part is anybody new who comes in. This is something that I strongly believe in. They need a quick and easy win. They are in a new environment. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how friendly you are, no matter how welcoming you are, it's a new environment, new context, new domain, new technology, all of that. So set them up for a quick and easy win, so that in a month or so they are able to deliver maybe a few tickets, or they win a few deals if they are in sales. Again, different outcomes based on different departments and different contexts. And by the time they come to that first quarter, they've achieved a significant amount of victory and outcome. And then, right, you start setting, you guide them into setting their own goals and carving their own path within that team. So that, I think, makes a huge difference.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Super. Well said, Sriram. Now
Mm,
I'll come to the I'll come to the performance part, right?
mm,
Like I said, open this up. No, nobody else better to talk about it, right? So how does performance management, performance, and you spoke about outcomes, right? Measuring outcomes vis-a-vis effort,
mm,
right?
mm,
So what is the framework that you have in place at Betterworks to kind of measure,
mm,
set goals, measure outcomes? Right. Obviously, I mean, I can clearly understand that you're not measuring effort, right? I mean, you're not
mm,
looking at clocking hours, but how do you go about those, right? Because I can it's this is another place where I see a lot of HR. I mean, a lot of HR struggle to set up a policy or set up a
mm,
guideline or a framework. When then the default is like to fall back on who's showing up more often, right? Who's like
mm,
who's
mm,
right who's like kind of crying out for help more often, right? They become the heroes of the team, right? So why don't
yep.
you why don't you give us a sneak peek into how performance measurement and management happens at Betterworks?
Sure. Yeah. See, Betterworks was the pioneer of the OKR model when we got started, and we've evolved a lot from that. We are now more into continuous performance management. But that original spirit, it helps us a lot in many ways. Now, when you look at goals and OKRs, right, there are at least three aspects that you can consider. There is delivery, there is the individual learning, and there is the team growth or team transformation. Okay. Now, delivery goals, it doesn't take a lot of effort to set them. If you're not setting delivery goals, you're possibly not working at all. That's the easiest. Everybody knows that they have to ship a feature, they have to sign a deal, they have to cut costs. These are things that every department knows. Every team kind of instinctively sets and tracks them. So as a manager, that's the easiest problem to solve. I primarily use OKRs for learning and for transformation. My delivery goals are usually tracked in AHA, those kind of places. If my delivery goal is going to be hiring, then I'm looking at an ATS, that kind of solution. Again, going back to the principle, as much as possible in the flow of work.
Flow
Uh,
of work, yeah.
Yep. Learning and growth are, a slightly difficult, different, pattern. Now, when we say growth or change, a team is possibly delivering in a particular way. You want to change it. You want to improve the quality of a team's delivery. You want to deliver the speed at which they are delivering things. That is something that you set as an OKR. Same thing with learning as well. So what we do is when we set a growth OKR, The first thing is, this is a word that I like a lot. I think I coined it. I don't know if it exists, but I talk about intellectual honesty. You have to relentlessly pursue and make sure that you're actually following an outcome and not anything else. Let's talk about an example of setting a goal towards on engineering, and it also has a context that I got from my experience. Learning recruitment OKR saying that I have to hire 5 candidates. So I'm going to speak with 50 candidates every month, so that I can get 5 candidates in the quarter. And I actually set an OKR like that to start with, which is actually ridiculous because at one point within a month I had spoken to 100 candidates and I was still not closing questions because I had targeted effort. The moment I switched to saying that I need to push 5 candidates through the next stage of my pipeline every couple of weeks, then I actually had to speak to lesser candidates and I was actually hiring better. So that kind of setting outcomes for yourself and for the team that focuses on goals that focus on outcome, that matters a lot.
Right.
And yeah, and if you're talking about learning OKRs, you talk about learning and application. That's something that we do a lot in Betterworks. Maybe looking at courses and all of it to acquire a new understanding how you applied that skill as well.
Got it.
Many of the OKRs that I set with my managers for their teams, my managers set with their team members, they go through at least 3 or 4 revisions. We take our time with that.
Hmm.
Uh,
Right.
and then, so that's part one. And part two is where most people drop the ball, where you don't have continuous check ins, you don't have continuous follow up. Again, you need to approach it with a scientist's approach. The idea is not to try and achieve the outcome, but to try and see, are you achieving the outcome or not? If not, what is the next discovery that you can make that will make you move forward and also make you move sideways sometimes.
Right.
In the last 4.5 years, sometimes I've abandoned a goal when I realized that that is not full to the organization anymore, simply because I was doing frequent check-ins. And
Right.
all of this again, bringing it back to the remote context, right? Because we have a tool, Betterworks. We use our own tool very extensively. A lot of it gets recorded over there. I use it as my personal assistant. So I schedule time every 2 weeks to spend time reviewing goals, conversations, all of it. So automatically it
Mhm.
happens in a continuous manner and it happens in a remote manner. I don't have to get a bunch of my managers together in office and review goals. A lot of it happens
Right.
asynchronously that way.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you for that, Sriram. And now coming to this one statement that you made, and I think you've already
Hmm?
elaborated quite a bit of it, right?
Hmm?
When we spoke earlier, is that productivity, right?
Hmm?
Or I would probably generalize productivity, or like kind of move a few feet higher and say performance, right? Because
Hmm? Hmm?
again, productivity is not just churning out stuff, right? Like
Yep.
you
Yep.
said,
Hmm?
it has to get better with time, right? So
Hmm?
performance and workplace, right, don't have a correlation,
Hmm?
right?
Hmm?
And this is complete antithesis to the RTO
Hmm? Hmm?
folks, right? So
Hmm?
I think you've kind of nailed it in terms of saying how being async and how assuming the culture of shared ownership and all that is kind of helping you achieve that without being physically together, right? But if you can elaborate this statement, right, the statement further,
Hmm?
and this is a true statement. It's not like a
Hmm? Hmm?
ambitious
Hmm? Hmm?
forward-looking statement. And many companies are kind of able to do this today. And in fact, any remote company that you've spoken to, they are watching for the fact that they are seeing this correlation not being there, right? So I would love to kind of have you elaborate the statement, right? Why? What makes you so committed and so vociferously, boldly saying that performance and workplace don't have a correlation to each other?
I think it's just a statement of the reality. It has always been the case. I can speak from my personal experience. When I was a young engineer working for one of the big consultancy companies that I was working for about 10, 15 years ago. During that time, I worked from offices in Bangalore, multiple offices in Bangalore. They had multiple offices.
Mhm.
I worked there. I worked from client locations in the country. I worked in multiple client locations in Silicon Valley and Austin. I worked in airports, I worked in flights, I worked in hotels, I worked in cafes.
Right.
And a big chunk of that team was working that way. And if you look at people whose work naturally takes them to places, salesmen, plumbers, electricians, it really expand the idea of a workforce is not just software sitting and working. There are people, all these people, they work. Their work is not tied to where they are actually getting the work done. Uh,
Right.
so that has always been the case, and technological advancements have always been making this easier. They've been helping this disconnect become more visible. Think of it, right? When Cisco voice over IP phones and all those phones came, and people didn't have to get a B1 visa and travel to US as often as they had to. Nobody said that client interaction, client relationships are not sit and talk in a conference room. You have to go and see them and spend months together. My travel time reduced a lot as video conferences became the norm. So if in that case we were able to trust people to build relationships to get work and all of it, why will we not be able to trust them right now?
Right.
I think that is what we really need to think about. It is not that suddenly COVID came and remote work became a thing, and then productivity and performance got disconnected from the place of work. That has
Right.
always been the case. People work through Bombay floods. People
Yep.
work through the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I
yeah.
had a very funny story.
Mm,
I was with another big
mm,
consulting firm like you were, right?
mm,
I traveled all the way from Chennai to Kitchener, which is a city near Toronto, right? To
mm,
to do a presentation, right? To do a
mm,
proposal presentation, right?
mm,
And the time was such that there was a storm, a
mm.
snowstorm in that area. Eventually, we did a Google Meet. Right? I had
Yeah,
traveled
yeah,
all the way, but then I think the outcome of the meeting would have been the same, right? Irrespective
yep,
of whether I was
yep,
physically in the room with people or not. Finally, we ended up doing that, and we won the project, and we were executing the project, right? So it's kind of funny incident that I travel
yep, yep.
like probably thousands of kilometers, but then to do this virtually, it became the joke of my team. Anyway, so I think that's a statement, right? But then contrary question is like, why do you think the naysayers for remote kind of hark on this point that productivity performance takes a nosedive, right? Innovation
Mm,
takes a nosedive.
mm,
Team bonding. I mean, maybe we'll come to the team bonding later, but team collaboration takes a nosedive
mm,
when
mm,
people are not at the RTO. I mean, not at
mm,
office, right? And these are not like uh, these are like these are leaders that we respect. I mean, from Elon Musk
mm.
to Sam Altman to Sundar Pichai to everybody, right? So these are leaders that have broken barriers at multiple levels. But why do you think, in your own personal opinion, why do you think they still have this attachment to the office, and they link it to these reasons, productivity, performance, and all that?
Yep, yep. So I want two points. The first is, you might be the most brilliant leader in one area, you still have your blind spots.
Right.
That is always there. Like there is that story. I think Balmer who said that Android is never going to be a thing. It's Microsoft that's going to rule the world. And
Right.
ultimately, iPhone. Sorry, not Android. iPhone. He said that that's never going to be a thing, and Steve Jobs just took it away from him. So you can be as successful, as popular as you want, you will still have your blind spots. So I think this is that case where it's a blind spot for a lot of leaders. The second thing, and this is again, it's a very personal opinion. I think
Right.
there is a little more shift from a capitalist world to a world that puts more power in the hands of the workers with all of this changes happening, and that is always met with fear. Right from the days of the French Revolution, anything that empowers, the oppressed or the working class, so as to speak, is always met with fear.
Right. Right.
And I think that is where a lot of this reaction comes from. Also, you are worried. What will people do with this extreme freedom that they might have? At least in Betterworks' experience, I can say that we just wish we had given that freedom a lot, earlier.
Earlier.
Yeah,
Earlier. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we end up designing in a lot of cases, right? We end up designing systems and processes for the lowest common denominator,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So we can say there'll be like that one person who will do moonlighting, there'll be that one person who will not open the laptop ever, right?
Yep.
But then
Yep.
for that 1% or that 1% of people, right, the 99% or the remaining 100% kind of go through a poorly designed strategy or a process or whatever, right? So that's I think that's the human mentality, right? We look at why it would fail, even though the percentage is very small. We end up designing things for
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I think we drop towards the closure of this,
Hmm?
Sriram. But I would love to do two things.
Hmm?
I mean, ask you two things, right? One, um, I mean, talking about being remote first, yet you have partnered, or Betterworks has partnered with GoFloaters to
Hmm?
enable that in-person interactions. I mean, occasionally, right,
Yep.
whenever it's needed,
Yep.
right? How do you think that's helping, right?
Hmm?
So, because what happens is like, again, people see remote sometimes as a zero and
Hmm?
one, right?
Hmm?
You are like remote. It means like, hey, you're low, you feel lonely. You're like you don't get exposed to other things. You're not able to socialize. There's no team bonding happening. So they either see it as a black or a white,
Hmm?
right? So, but then it's not a black and white, right? It's everything in between, right? Why don't you kind of throw some light of how the enablement of having access to co-working spaces for your teams, what has that changed? What positive things it has brought to the
Yep,
table?
yep. No, I think GoFloaters is a boon that way. Three areas that I can see it really helps, right? Is for me, I book GoFloaters once in a while just to get away from my home and spend a day at office just by myself. I don't even go and get anybody else along with me. Nobody
Right,
at my workplace knows that I'm going to office that day.
right,
It's good to just step out that way and get that kind of break. That is really helpful. The second thing is, like you said, we also get together often, as a team. People in Bangalore get together, people in Hyderabad, Delhi, whoever can get together. That really helps as well. And most of the times when we go there, what we do is we don't try to get a lot of work done during that time. We just catch up, and there are some people who just like to come, work. We have a couple of who are this archetypal engineer. They just like to come and sit and work just sitting next to their team. They enjoy that experience. So a lot of that kind of stuff happens. And
right,
finally, right, this is the most exciting part for me, and that's what I think GoFloaters really helps a lot, because it again allows the teams to self-manage. I have people in Gurgaon, I have people in second tier cities who self-organize and get together, and they work together from office, and I don't even know about it.
right,
I
right,
think that is something that GoFloaters really empowers us, and all of that, right? If you look at office as a space, it is one of the spaces that you come to socialize. Then that makes a huge
right,
difference,
right,
and again, if this is how it always was, when I went to office, most of the time when I was working deep, I would be sitting on my desk, focusing on my computer, my notebook, and doing my work.
hmm,
Socialization happens outside that space.
right,
Socialization happened when I used to go for a cup of tea with other people, for a movie outside work, for a dinner outside work, and none of these require an office. It requires a tea shop, it requires a theater, it requires a hotel. None of it requires
right.
an office. So that is how we've been using the GoFloaters platform, and it's been really really effective for us.
Right. So if, the point that you kind of mentioned there, right, at a physical office,
Hmm?
a lot of this happens in that 8 hours or 7 hours, 8 hours that you spend, right? You're context
Hmm?
switching constantly. You're
Hmm?
getting like you're socializing, you're working, you're collaborating, you're working, right? So a lot of context switching happening in the time, right? But with remote, you can decide, hey, today and tomorrow is going to be my heads don't work day. I'm going to get these
Hmm?
20 things done, right? On Wednesday, I'm going to go and meet my team and just socialize, right? So you're
Hmm?
able to
Hmm?
better compartmentalize time, better manage time, and better plan time, right? And you're able to kind of, and by not context switching so many times through in a given day, I think you also end up saving a lot of time and probably mistakes as well, right? Because you're able to focus on doing what one thing correct, right, and not trying to do multiple things correct in a given day, and then end up doing a substandard piece of work,
Exactly, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So, and the last final
Hmm?
question, Sriram, is that how do you see this going forward? And again, I think I know the answer, at least for Betterworks and
Hmm?
for
Hmm?
Sriram, right? Whether Sriram was with Betterworks or not, I think you're going to default to choosing such an organization. But how do you see this entire space evolving for other companies such as yourselves, specifically in remote? And number
Hmm?
two, and again, this is probably a different question, but uh, uh, in such a remote setting, right? How do you keep morale and motivation levels? Like maybe this question first before you go into the forward-looking
Sure.
question.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So morale and motivation, right? See, the standard responses that I've read and I've heard are, okay, you do these, fun activities, you have all these, etc., and all of it. That's all fluff. That's all candy, floss. Okay. Morale really comes from a shared sense of purpose.
Right.
It's like that is where it comes from. A team that is playing towards one goal, winning continuously. That is where morale comes from.
Absolutely.
So, are you, as a manager, as a leader, are you, that is really the question. If you do that, morale automatically happens. Trust, you do it by treating people kindly and respectfully. Uh, you know, uh, and that's the most important thing, I think. When you talk about people treating people kindly and respectfully, when you're, building a culture of trust, you really have moments that test that culture when people fall short of your trust. Are you still
Correct.
able to treat them kindly and respectfully? A good
Exactly.
example that I can think of is somebody who's not performing. You can take a hard decision of letting them go, but you can let them go with trust, with respect, and with kindness. That sort of practice, are you able to do that? That is, the first
Right.
question. The second question is, when you say purpose, are you giving your team accountability frameworks? Are you giving them, systems by which they can check in continuously, measure their own progress, and correct course? Are you empowering them to
Correct.
do that? And are
Hmm.
you giving them skills also? A lot of this is, developed. Now, if you do all fun stuff, people do it. I'm an extreme introvert. So after a good day's work, I would prefer to just lock myself up separately. Stay with my well-informed circle of friends and books
Right.
and that kind of stuff, and continue with that. Whereas there are a lot of people in my team, sometimes I even get scared looking at some of these young people, the amount of energy that they have, and the amount of activities that they do. It is amazing, and it's scary. The people who need that energy, they figure that out and they do that. The people who don't need that energy, they do it the way they want to do it in their lives. So I think that is really the key thing. You want morale, you want motivation to be high in your team. uh, you know uh, Give them purpose, give them skills that they can build on, give them frameworks that help them stay accountable. Morale automatic.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, there is the other question
Absolutely.
around that, which is keeping morale during difficult times. That's a very different situation, and that is something that you have to do as a leader, whether you're remote or not. It doesn't have any connection to remote work. Clarity of vision and all of that. That's a separate thing altogether.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, so this is the standard theory used for team formation, right? The team
Hmm?
forms norms and performs,
Yep.
right? I mean, storms, right? Sorry, storms,
Yep. Yep.
norms, and perform. So when a team is put through their paces of working on a common purpose and a common journey, right? And then
Hmm?
those the tough times come, and then the team is able to pull up each other, right? And then do it. Those are the things where everything happens automatically, right? You're not trying to extraneously force any team bonding. You're not extraneously trying to create the transparency of communication. All of this happens when you put them through that. Only when I mean, I would say go on to the extent that the purpose has to be. I mean, there's a purpose. Obviously, every team, every company has a purpose. But then I should be able to relate to that purpose, right? I mean, I
Hmm?
should be able to
Hmm?
kind of see that, hey, this is what my piece of work is going to help achieve that, right? I mean, if it's like I'm not able to relate my work to the larger vision, right? You get disconnected from the journey is what I sometimes feel. It's constantly, hey, this is why you are important in the team. This is what your work is going to help us achieve, right? So kind of always reiterating that is what I've seen personally. So again, sorry,
No, no.
digress a little bit. So lastly, right, how do you see this going forward? There's a lot of confusion, a lot of flux, a lot of
Yeah.
right companies flipping back on their earlier promise to provide that flexibility of workplace. How do you see that going forward? Do you see this continuing? Do you see it stabilizing? Do you see that a clear line is drawn between companies that want to do this way versus this way, or is it always going to be every company is kind of having bits and pieces that are working in different models of work?
Yes. See, again, right, predicting the future is hard, but the way I look at it, I think we are moving towards a future where any work that doesn't require physical presence will be remote first by choice. And the reason I'm saying that is, the world is not determined by, what 40, 50-year olds decide as leaders and, what they do. It is really determined by how, the 20-year-old today looks at things. And if you speak to any 20-year-old today, any young person, they are looking at freedom, they are looking at happiness, they are looking at, flexibility. And these are the people who will really create, the future. And if that's a state of, a 20-year-old, an adult, then think of how much more, freedom and flexibility the generation after that is going to expect. So
Right, right.
that's exactly the direction that it's going to go in. The question really is whether us middle-aged dinosaurs are going to evolve or not. That's how I look at it. It's the same thing, right? My father, if I look at it, had to call his boss sir. He had to play to his boss's whims and fancies.
Ego. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and most of the bosses from that era thought that that is how it's going to continue. And if you say
Right.
that we are going to go into a situation where people will come to office wearing shorts and t-shirts, open toe slippers, that's unimaginable. That's something that people are saying it is unimaginable. But my generation actually kind of that is what we wanted and we did that. So I think that's how it's going to happen. It's an inevitable future. I think people can either choose to be a part of that future, or they're going to get brushed aside. Eventually. That's how I
Right.
see it playing.
Right. Cool. And that's a very nice way to put it. Putting showing the mirror back to people, right? You've
Hmm?
changed. I mean the current generation leaders did not accept the same way of working that the previous generation of leaders did, right? And the
Hmm?
change is
Hmm?
constant, as they say, right? So now this is the next realm of change that's kind of. It was always happening, right? There were remote companies before as well, but then
Hmm?
happening at a scale it is happening now is something that people are not able to come to terms with, right? And the
Yep.
sooner
Yep.
sooner you come to terms with, you've got a better you don't get branded the dinosaur by Sriram.
Yep. 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 And there is data, right? There is that a lot of data. Organizations that empower people actually achieve a lot more business results. There are clear studies, there are clear data, there are clear examples. Like I said, Semco and Ricardo Semler is one example. There is Basecamp, there is GitLab. There are umpteen organizations, Atlassian in Australia. These are all organizations that have shown that this actually works. Whether you want to think of a small bootstrapped startup that is successful or a company that has gone IPO, there are examples everywhere. There are stories everywhere. You just have to review and learn from them.
No, for me, the what's even more extreme example is so many open source products that we use today, right?
Exactly.
Like
Hmm?
just imagine that there was no commercial
Hmm?
that was running, and from Apache to Eclipse to JetBrains to so many of them, right? All these open source
Yep.
products, they got built by remote teams, right? And they've all self-organized,
Yep.
right? Right? There was no like nobody said, "I'm your boss, I'm your manager, thou shall work," right? They've all self-organized and
Yep.
done such a beautiful job, and a lot of the things that we build today are on top of these open source foundational products, right? And they all got done remotely, right? And kind of
Yep. Yep. Yep.
uh, right? And they we not, many of what we do today would either be impossible to do or would be super difficult to do if these foundational elements were not there, right? That for me is the proof of the pudding, like no other, right? For remote, and if such beautiful products and frameworks could get done remotely, right? Why can't your mobile app be? the,
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. Unix is
the,
open source, and if remote work wasn't there, we none of us would even be running anything on software if not for
right.
Unix. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Sriram, always a pleasurable and a great learning experience when I talk to you. Those like the connections that you bring from outside of work, from the books that you've read, and being kind of your thoughts are always like crystal clear, right? And loved it. Loved talking to you. Loved getting a peek into your thought process and Betterworks and how you work. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting anecdotal evidence and tips that you've shared in terms of how you could organize teams for better performance while being remote, yet address challenges that come along with the remote, right? With
yep,
socialization
yep.
or with team bonding and all of that, right? So thanks for that, Sriram, and I look forward to doing another one. We'll deep dive into another topic of your choice, and we'll explore that. And one thing that the reason I'm doing this, or I wanted to do this, like if you look for anything on remote, right, you don't see any documentation of case study from an Indian team, right? You always have to look
True.
at Basecamp, you always have to look at
Hmm?
Atlassian, you always have to look at Doist, you'll always have to look at other companies, right? Automatic for WordPress and all that. So but like we have been a little poor at documenting stuff, right? And in terms of the case studies and best practices and all that, right? And we're trying to do a little bit in terms of bringing those things in the open, right? Because I think, and I also believe that truly what applies elsewhere may not apply to us, right? So we need to have our
Absolutely,
own
yep.
examples and our own heroes and our own role models for remote, than looking at elsewhere, right? And this is an attempt to do exactly that.
No, absolutely. Thanks again for the opportunity. Shyam, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And like I said, right, GoFloaters is a very very important part of our remote work culture. We wouldn't be able to build the kind of systems and process and cultures that we've built without the flexibility that GoFloaters offers. That ability to pick offices even in tier two cities. If we had tied to one vendor like WeWork or anybody else, IndieCube or anything of that, it would have been something that's quite amazing. And
Right.
I think the GoFloat it is a business of the future. I think it has a lot of potential, and I truly admire what you and your team are doing. So always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks, Lord Sriram. And I'm smiling quite wide inside, even though I'm not showing it. But yeah, it's a great endorsement, and it kind of means it kind of the validation certainly means a lot. I look forward to collaborating even further with your teams and crossing the journey. I mean, crossing the journey. I mean, along with you guys, because we're also this is evolving. This is an evolving space, and that's where the
Yep,
fun
yep,
is,
yep.
right? You don't know what the next day is going to throw at you, and you're constantly kind of answering that question. That's what makes your journey fun. So thanks for giving that opportunity to us, and for this opportunity to talk to you and peel the layers of how to build high performance remote teams.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good day to
Thank
you,
you.
Shia. Thank you. Have a nice day.
You have
Bye
a good
bye.
evening. Yeah. Bye bye.